You are listening to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss our RC adventures.
Welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss the ups and downs of the new RC Flyer. Join your hosts, Michael and Jay, as they take flight at the park. Now on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast. I'm Michael, and with me always is my good friend
Jay from the AK, formerly from the AK. Sorry about that, folks.
Well, how goes it tonight?
It's going hot, Mike. It is so hot everywhere. I never thought I would say this from a guy from Alaska, but it is almost too hot to fly.
No way.
Yeah, way. I'm like, unless you're standing in a puddle of ice water, I don't know what to do. I'm totally getting freaked out with my move down here to Texas. It's topsy turvy. It's opposite day. I don't know it's a beautiful day. I want to run outside, and then I get hit by the sun and I go limping away.
I kind of know how you feel because it's only like 118.
Yes, that's the part that's really funny is that you're having I'm complaining and you're having higher temperatures, 120 where you are. It's crazy.
Right.
It's crazy, dude.
Right. They do have a heat wave here. It's actually, I think it's some kind of a warning or something. So
some kind of a warning. I think the warning is the FAA saying that in your region, planes can't lift off the ground. They can't, and you may
That's
crash
on
a mile runway. Yes,
it's a performance thing. Well, hey, tonight we're talking about your new field. You got a new field open.
I do have a new field. It's open, and in between the heat bouts, I've been out there, and the guys have been doing a great job. They've mowed the field, and it's looking great. I'm buying like a little flag for the wind directions. Should be in the mail in a couple of days. And I'm just getting used to flying on a grass field again. I was spoiled up in Alaska. I got to fly on the base. I was kind of used to having a nice paved runway. And in fact, the guys out there they're really good sports, but they were teasing me because they were like, do you have any planes that have wheels? I mean, we did mow the grass. Are you going to be using the field? And so I was like, yes, I have planes that have wheels and such, but I haven't put them all back together or out of the boxes that, I moved in. So I've been looking at what planes I'm going to bring out and such. But I did get to test a couple of gliders, interesting stories, but it's been kind of fun. It's been nice being able to get back out and have the relaxation of flying again. It's been very nice.
Right. Well, better you than me. It's been so hot here. We really, I think my group canceled one of the weeks because it was just so hot. Everybody's fleeing to cooler weather.
I'm on that list that they put out, and it's funny the comments. We're not there, or we're going to Colorado where it's cooler.
Right.
I mean, just crazy stuff. It's pretty funny.
Right. So tell me a little bit about this new field. Is this an existing field or did you guys find it?
This is a field that the guys had prior. The problem was that they had lost contact with the owners. And it wasn't like 50 years they'd been out of contact with the guy. It was just that they'd been out of contact for a few years and they were wanting to start the field back up again. But it was one of those things that kind of lost contact, hadn't talked to the fellow. I kind of lent a hand because my mom knew a gal who knew an aunt of the guy. And so I was able to get everybody back in contact and we were able to sort that out. But it was really good because even though they had permission before, they were trying to do the right thing and not become a bad neighbor and just go back out there without talking to the guy. Even though he had given permission before, they didn't want to go out there and just start cutting the field and, acting like it was theirs again without the landowner's permission. Well, part of what I was told was it is Texas and people will start shooting at you. So it's just a polite thing to do.
Yeah. That's probably a good idea to actually double check with the landowner, make sure that there hasn't been a change in ownership or something like that.
Right, exactly. And it turned out that it was no problem getting permission once I got in contact with the landowner, and he graciously gave his permission. He's not charging us anything to use his field, and there were still some benches and stuff out there. So I'm taking upon myself to repaint the benches and, like I said, add a flag out there or something. And since I didn't get to join into the mowing, I'm going to try to contribute that way. but I'm really looking forward to it. It's really pretty out there. It's real nice. They have every place, all my fields I've flown have been really unique. Like I said, I flew on Elmendorf Air Force Base, and one of the cool things about being out there is sometimes you'd go out and there would be a moose and a calf would be out at the end of the runway, and that'd be kind of neat. Or sometimes you'd be out there and a black bear would come across and with 3 little cubs. Or I had one time where a fox came out and sat down right at the edge of the field, real close to us, and was watching the planes fly overhead. And we weren't sure just what the fox was going to do, but it just sat there and watched us fly or watched the planes fly. At this new field, it looks like I have a new group of furry friends. One of the things we saw out there, I was like, hey, there's a group of turkeys. That's pretty cool. Don't get to see that every day. And then I saw a weird 4-legged beast. It wasn't a cow, a Texas steer or anything like that. And it was kind of far away, and I wasn't sure just what it was. I was like, is that like a miniature camel? What is that?
A camel.
And it was one of those spitting alpacas or whatever.
Oh, the alpacas.
Yeah, so they have alpaca or whatever out there, and they just roam around out on some of the property. The guy's like, oh, these are great critters to raise. So now we have these alpacas that come out and watch us fly. So that's very interesting. So yeah, it's a great place, and I'm really grateful to the landowner, Mr. Wynn, for allowing us to fly out there. So it's gonna be a good field.
Well, kudos to them. And how long or wide is it? Is it big, or
you could land a full-sized aircraft out there. Basically, right now, those guys have I'd say about 200 by 50 feet mowed out for a field.
Wow.
But the field itself is, I'd say, a good half a mile long by, I'd say, maybe 400 yards across. So right now,
half a mile, that's like 2,500 feet or so.
Yeah, it's pretty big. I guess they used it as a former strip to land small general aviation at. So,
well, that makes sense.
It's pretty nice. It's like I said, we just mowed out a small portion just for our runway. So, and it's pretty, usually out here, you mow anything in Texas, there's rocks, and more rocks. So actually, it's not that rocky. It's pretty firm ground. If these guys get their roller back, I think they want to roll the field on top of this. The next time we have a good rainstorm, they want to roll the field out to make it even smoother, and it's going to be all that much better. In fact, I'm looking forward to maybe flying an EDF or two out there if we get the grass. Right now they have the grass short enough. We get it smoothed out. It might be nice enough for that. Or I may just have to get maybe a Motion RC aircraft that can fly off of grass. I don't know.
There you go.
Yep.
Can't go wrong with that. Now they fly gas or gassers.
The fellows that I fly with, they're pretty much all gassers or slimers, as they're known. And that's what they fly with. So I'm kind of the new duck since I'm electric only, being that my plane doesn't make noise, and they were teasing me because most of my planes didn't have wheels. So
right.
But
hey, how do you take that thing off?
Yeah, pretty much. These guys are there. I can tell them
how's that get airborne,
because they had a really good sense of humor, and they were definitely letting me have it, being the new guy at the field. So I think I'm going to enjoy it.
Well, that's always a pleasure to have guys that can get along and fly and have a good time.
Yeah,
that's one of those things. That's one of those things about my group. Everybody's good at just kind of pushing each other around. Kind of just like with tongue in cheek.
You got to have a little teasing. You got to have a little bit of that camaraderie. Like I said, I guess I'm a little bit of the junior in age wise, but really, it's kind of interesting after talking to the few of the guys that have been out there that I've had a chance to meet so far. All have different backgrounds, but we have very similar backgrounds in certain aspects of things. So it's kind of nice. For us, we're all Air Force guys, ex-Air Force guys.
Right.
So that was kind of our common thread. And once we all kind of figured that out about each other, that's when the jabs were coming in. And
oh, good.
Oh yeah. So the fangs came out, and they showed no mercy for the poor kids. So
excellent.
It's
all right, excellent. If they're listening, feel free to jab Jay all you want. It's definitely funny. Yeah. And then jump on the website and give us some details of how you guys just slam the guys. So did you fly anything out there? What did you take to the new field?
I did. I basically did, of all things, I decided I had 3 Maidens. I did 3 Maidens that day, and I flew one plane. I flew the Tough Wing kind of as my, get my fingers back into the loop of things.
Were they there when you flew the Tough Wing?
Oh, they were there when I flew the Deathwing. Yeah, sure thing.
Oh, what'd they think of that?
They liked that. They were surprised
they?
at how fast it went. So
I love flying the tough wing in front of folks because they look at it and go, oh yeah, it's a little wing, and then I putter around with it, and then I just wide open that thing. It's
yeah, they're
like
surprised at how loud it
miles
is
an
when
hour.
it gets really loud, and then you put it in a dive and you come zipping by them. And then they were kind of amazed when you tumble it. They're not expecting you to tumble a wing,
right.
And that really kind of wakes them up. So either that or you go from ground level 300 feet straight up, and they're just amazed by that.
No more than 400
That's
feet.
what
Is that what you're about to say? No more than 400. You go from ground level to right at 400. Yeah, I know how that is. So, okay, so you flew the wing and you had 2 other maidens.
I had 3 other maidens. I maidened.
3 other.
I had gotten off of Craigslist of all things. I got a Radian XL glider off of Fellow. Got a great price. In fact, that's a little strange story too. I meet this guy, never met him before, but he comes up to me and he says, "Hey, do you know this guy?" And he names some guy's name. And I go, "Yeah, I do know that guy." Once again, Mike, I mean, I don't know exactly what I bought it down in San Antonio. I don't know the population of San Antonio, but I guess it's, it's up there. It's 800,000 people or so. I'm like, okay, I've only been in the state a little while. How does this guy know this guy that I know back up in Alaska? That was just kind of a weird statement to come out of a guy who I meeting him at the 7-Eleven. I'm just like, out of the blue, like, is the government watching me?
Was he driving a blue van that had like ice cream bars on the side?
He was talking into his wrist, or his sleeve or his shoulder, Yeah. So it turns out that this guy happens to be from Anchorage, Alaska. And so he happened to know a mutual friend who flies aircraft as well, and had given him a plane or two. And he was like, "Yeah, you said you were for Anchorage. I thought you might know this guy." He just threw his name out there because he'd gotten some planes from him and such. And I was kind of amazed. So he told me where he lived, and I told him where I lived. And I'm like, that is just the weirdest thing to be on the planet, to go somewhere 2,800 miles away and bump into a guy who used to live down the street from you.
For all those that don't know, the world is really a small place.
It is. I mean, it is.
Seriously. I've done that more than once. Where I've been like overseas or somewhere, and somebody's like, "Hey, do you know so and so?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So yeah, the world can be very small to some of us.
Yes, that's true. So anyway, I got this Radian XL. Got a really good deal on it. This is kind of a funny plane, right? So how we talked about getting a plane when it's just all white and putting some color or something on it. So I went through and I didn't do like a super fantastic tape job, but I put a little color on it, and the guy had a big black stripe on it, and I kind of added some red accents and put some on the tail, and I did some other stuff. So now I have a plane at least you can see. Not to say that this Radian's 2.6 meters. It's a big bird. I get this plane all together, and I'm assembling at the field, and this was the first time I'd really assembled the whole plane. Because it's so large, I didn't put it together at the house. I only put certain parts of it. And it's really cool is this guy gave me this plane, and he left one of the boxes that obviously was one of the part of the shipping box, so that you can, when you take the wing apart, so the wingtips could go on this one part. And then he had Velcroed in some other stuff to put in the wing spars. He made like this really nice box for it. It was kind of nice how he had it all set up. The elevator comes apart, and he made little miniature wing bags for him that were glued to the side of the box, so you could take it all apart, and you had all your parts together. And he even Velcroed in a baggie so that you could when you take all the bolts out, you could put them in the baggie, and they're all inside this little box. So I was like, wow. Nothing elaborate, but it was really well thought out, so you wouldn't lose anything or forget anything.
He did all that for transportation, right? So he could.
He did all that for transportation. Okay. So it was a great little setup. So off.
Yeah, that's a smart idea.
So off I go, and I'm at the field. So now I'm assembling this plane for the first time. So I get it all together, and I'm checking the weights and balances and everything, and how that goes. And we go out there to go give it a good chuck, and I start flying it. And the Radian XL, if anybody has a Radian, of course it has a little polyhedral to the wings. And it doesn't fly like some of my normal gliders, like our Phoenix 2000, which just is a straight wing glider. 2-meter glider.
Right.
So, with the Polygon, it does not have any ailerons. It's just rudder and elevator only. Oh, and it has spoilers on it, but it has no ailerons, that type or flaps or anything. So it wallows or wag, I don't know what's the term I'm looking for. It
yaws back.
It does yaw back and forth, and so it just kind of
because it's rudder only.
Rudder only. So the wingtips are kind of shaking all over the place. I know, folks, you can't see me. I'm moving my shoulders like to imitate what it does.
Yeah, you look like you're dancing.
That's
actually,
right.
Huh?
Dun, dun, dun,
And put a Bee Gees song on, you'd be really good.
No. So it's doing its little dance, and I'm kind of getting used to that since I hadn't flown a plane like this since my first motor glider that I had. I haven't flown a design like this in 15 years, so or whatever. So it's been a long time, 20 years. I was getting used to that, and the wingtips were wagging a lot. And so I'm like, that's kind of weird, but it seems to be, it's flying well. Man, it would just catch any little lift. It really gave you an indication of which way the lift was coming. So one of the problems that this guy had told me about the plane was that the tail feathers, the plane did not like dives. And if you got any speed with it, the tail would start to vibrate and shake and do terrible things. So what I did, and it was really, when I looked at it, the tail section, the elevator and the rudder was molded really thinly. So it comes to this nice thin ending. And the bad part about that is you add any pressure, you bend it or you do whatever. And of course, if it got in any kind of real high speed, I could see how it could flutter because there's really nothing. I mean, there's a spar that goes through there, but it doesn't go to the edges and they're so thin. So what did I do? I had some 1.7 millimeter laminate, and I laminated the tail feathers, and boy, did it strengthen that stuff up. And it made it so much more stiffer. It really helped. So I noticed that once I put it into a dive, the tail didn't flutter, but the wingtips, man, they would just kind of shake and do all sorts of weird things. But anyway, I kind of got used to it. It was kind of a calm day. I flew it around. I landed it. Whew, I was all happy. And so as our stories normally go, the guys that were out there with me, they ended for the day. And I said, well, okay, I'm out here. I think I want to take I want to take the XL back up again.
Let me just fly it one more time.
Yeah. So I said one more time, and I got out there. And so what did me in was there were buzzards out and they were flying. And it was kind of funny because the minute I threw the XL out and I got it up to 50 feet, was just kind of, trimming it out and doing some other things. The buzzards saw it and they came right out and got in formation with it. And then all of a sudden they flew off to the left, were catching lift, and I flew off to the left. And what do you know? I started catching lift. So I just hung out with the buzzard and followed them around the field. Typical on this day. Well, it's kind of a hot summery day. There's a little bit of humidity, and oh boy, before long you're getting some clouds that kind of look like little thundercells kind of moving in. The wind starts picking up. The gray starts getting kind of grayish. I can kind of see some rain in the distance. I see some lightning flashes in the distance, and I'm kind of like where the field's at. It's not like it's in a valley per se. There's some hills around it, but you can see the weather coming over the hills, the taller hills. And I'm like, oh, I think I might want to get down. By this time now, I'm really getting into this glider, and I love the 2.6. And with the coloration I put on it, I could see this bird perfectly. It looks gorgeous, right? So now I'm above the buzzards. I'm out thermaling the buzzards, or maybe the buzzards are just smarter and hey, look at that, look at that jerk. He's going too high.
They're looking out at going, hey, there's some weather coming. We're going this way.
We're going this way.
That's what they're
so
doing.
I'm like, wee, look at me. So now I'm up. I look up and now I'm like, okay. First of all, I was flying actually rather close to myself, so I'm cranking. My neck. I'm just looking straight up at this bird. My neck's getting like I'm getting like a Charlie horse in my neck, and I'm like, oh, this is not good.
Right.
And at that time, I go, oh man, I'm really high because that's a 2.6 meter bird, and it's starting to look really small. I better bring it down, right? So I kind of bring it. I get out of the lift. I start bringing it down, but now I can't really tell how steep of a dive I'm in.
Right, because it's over your head.
It's over my head, and it's kind of coming down straight towards me. So I can't tell if I'm in a gentle, just kind of slowly descending, or if I'm in a screaming dive until I start hearing it whistle. And then I go, ooh, I'm diving pretty fast. So I give it a little back pressure, and I start coming out of the dive, and it starts climbing. and it starts climbing, and then all of a sudden those wingtips are, they're doing a little thing, and I'm like, oh, that ain't good. All of a sudden I hear crack, and I go, uh-oh. At that point, it's kind of like I was doing a hammerhead turn, right? I'm near vertical. I hear the crack. The left wingtip, like it's like somebody pulled the yellow handles on them, poof, and it just gets ejected, poof, whoosh, and it starts twiddling down.
No.
And I'm like, oh, that's not good. So I complete the hammerhead turn. I'm not trying to do one. It just does a hammerhead turn type thing. It comes around, and now I'm like,
well, now it's missing a wingtip, right?
Yeah, missing a third of the wing, just fell off, or whatever.
Gosh.
And well, I shouldn't say a third. Well, but a good portion of it has fallen off. That whole wingtip is gone. And I'm like, okay, I should be okay, right? Because I still have most of the wing.
Sure, there's only like 4 inches of wingtip missing. I should be fine.
There's more than 4. So pretty much the whole polyhedral. That's the word I was looking for. The whole polyhedral is gone. It's departed. Now it's fluttering back to Earth safely. I'm like, okay, I should still be okay, right? So now that I'm trying to get control, but now of course it wants to do what?
It wants to turn in one direction.
It wants to turn in one direction, and I have rudder only. I have no ailerons.
Right.
So now I'm trying to fight that as I'm doing this turn, and I'm trying to get I'm getting up airspeed, and I'm trying to level off. I'm trying to get it to level off. And like I told you, like I'm up there. I'm still up. It's not like I'm only 200 feet off the ground. I'm I'd say 1,000 feet off the ground. I'm up there. And I'm like, whoo.
Were you using spoilers at the time, or you just was in the dive?
I'm just kind of in the dive. At least I think things were happening. I might have been flicking switches. I don't know. So I was like, click, 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 click.
I don't know what's going on, but it's coming down.
So this is one of those times, folks. I will tell you, some days I like to fly by myself. I do. Sometimes I like to go out there, whether I'm just trying out new things, or some days I just like to be out there, not being, having to talk to people, and I can just fly and I can concentrate just on my planes or doing whatever I want to do. Now I'm sitting there going, this is a bad time to be out here by myself, because now pieces.
Yeah, where's Mike when I need him?
Exactly. I could use another set of eyes
in Arizona,
because I can't look at the piece that's fluttering. It's just falling like a falling leaf, wafting. It's just wafting down.
Because it weighs nothing.
It weighs nothing,
right?
It's a feather. Right. While my rest of my plane is now, I guess the word's plummeting towards Earth. So I'm
coming down whether you want it to or not.
So now I'm trying to get control. I'm trying to get out of that diving turn, and I finally get control of it. And just as I'm kind of pulling out and trying to get the load off that wing, that's when the second one pulled the handles and it gets ejected. So now,
both your wingtips are fluttering to the ground.
Gone. And I'm just my mouth is wide open because I'm just like, oh crap, because what's left on the wing? Now the center portion of the wing is still, it's a good meaty piece, but there's no aileron. There's no ailerons on it. It's just rudder and elevator. And now it's in a dive because I'm just like, whoa, because it's like one of those things where I'm like, I'd be looking at somebody if they're standing next to me going, look at that, I'm the guy flying the plane. I go, oh, I'm flying the plane.
Right.
So I'm like, will this thing still fly? I pull back up on the stick and it comes up and it's responsive. And I'm like, no way, this thing is still flying. If it's still flying, I can still live.
Sure.
So I end up making like 2 or 3 circles around, and I'm trying not to make them too steep because once again, it's rudder only. So I don't want to get it so far over that if, I don't want to lose that lift and lose so I'm trying to keep it in this pretty neutral thing. And now I'm like, oh boy, it's getting harder to get the nose to come up, And I said, well, I have a throttle. So I hit the throttle and I just kind of motored up and came back out, lined myself up with the runway, put myself off the runway, brought it in. I think that's when I put the spoilers in because I was still coming a little hot. I just kind of did a little stall before the high grass on the edges and plopped it right into the grass. Perfect. Not a scratch on the plane. And then I look up and I'm like, oh, there's part of my fluttering, leaf falling wingtip. And of course, it fluttered all the way across into the other field, fell across the stream, which I couldn't cross. So it's out in the field. Now, where the first wingtip ejected, I have no idea where it went. I lost sight of it to keep eyes on my plane.
The buzzards stole it.
I guess they did, man.
They were laughing. They were over there laughing. By the way.
Oh yeah.
The buzzards were over there having a grand old time. So
after I landed the plane, I think I immediately sent you and Alaska Mike Barslew. I sent you guys
photos.
I sent you guys some pictures of my new modified plane.
Yeah, I like the square wingtips. That really looked good. They just like this modified wing. It just chopped the end of the wing.
Exactly. So
was it a little? It was probably a little sporty.
It was very sporty. Yeah. It flew quite well, but you have to fly it fast without that.
Oh sure.
Without that part of the wing is on.
All of your lift, all that lift on the end of the wings is.
I was sitting there doing my NTBS accident report. NTSB accident report, and I'm like, okay, what happened? Why did? Because I was wondering why the wings were fluttering or they were just jumping the whole time I was flying this thing.
Just before you go into this report, when you put the wings on, do they slip on or do they screw on?
They slip on and then you screw them in.
So there's two plastic pieces, if I can remember.
There's actually 3 plastic tabs that kind of line up the wing, and then 2 have screws that screw them into place.
Right.
The wings in.
Right. Okay. So you have those 2 screws, and the screws were there, or were they gone too?
Well, on one wing I could still tell because it was attached. The other one ripped that whole piece out of the wing.
So if that means that it was attached, the 2 screws were actually in there.
Oh yeah, it definitely was attached because it definitely ripped the whole thing out.
So when you put it together, all 4 screws were attached.
Well, I couldn't tell. All I could tell was only 2. I only had 2 screws left because the entire plastic piece got ripped out of the wing.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if the screws were not there, it wouldn't have ripped the plastic piece out.
No.
So obviously,
yes, it worked.
You had all 4 screws, so that was not the problem.
It was not.
Of the attachment.
It was not.
But they were fluttering. You said.
Oh yeah. They were kind of fluttering and jumping like you were saying, and it was just like they weren't having enough support. I'm sitting here mumbling myself, what happened? What could have possibly happened? So I started, I'm kind of all disgusted with myself and kicking myself as to what could have went wrong. So I start taking the plane apart to put it back into the cool carrying box that had been made for me. And as I'm doing this, I open up the box, and what falls out in my hands? Oh, look, it's these beefy, thick as redwood, wood spars that go into this thing. I forgot to put this because I didn't put this plane together.
Wait, the main spar?
Right. This plane not only has one main spar, it has one main spar, and then it has a further trailing edge wing spar. So it has a total of 4
out to the
spars
wingtip is what you're talking about.
That attach the wingtips on. I didn't put them in. All I did was attach the screws into the plastic tabs which hold the wingtips on once you have the spars in.
Wait, I got to go back. Hold on. I think I have a podcast down here for a pre-flight. Yes, we do have a podcast for a pre-flight.
I'm telling you. This was an expensive lesson for me.
Oh my gosh.
I got this glider for a song, and it was a great deal. But so I forgot to put since I didn't put the spars in, and like I said, the wingtips are out there. If I knew where they fluttered to, I could have got them, repaired them, put them back on. But because I have no idea where they went, I had to order 2 new wingtips. Now, the great thing is that this is an E-flight plane, so I could get replacement parts. The bad part was the fact that you had to have. Okay, remember that plastic piece that pulled off, and it was still attached to the the wingtip that fell off, that's fluttering in the wind. Well, I have to have that little plastic piece to add back on, even though I can buy another wingtip. I need that plastic piece to help align and attach it because the screws go in to hold it to the wing.
So that plastic piece is on the main wing.
It's on the main wing.
It's
not on the plastic. It's not on the wingtip. It goes to the main wing.
So and I would suspect that you can't buy just that little plastic piece. No, you cannot buy
just that plastic piece. So basically, I had to buy a whole new wing. I bought the main center portion, then I bought the wingtips. I made it work after that when I got it. Now, there's more to the story because I ended up getting after like a week or 2, I ended up getting the wingtips back. I mean, I got the wing back with the wingtips replacement pieces. And, of course, they must have had a guy from Samsonite who was working for UPS on the side. And if you folks don't know what this is,
it was Ace Ventura,
yeah,
right? It was the Ace Ventura guy
kicking the box.
where he's dropping
Yes.
it, kicking it, and it says fragile all the side, and he runs over it with his car a couple
and
times.
We'll have to add that to the show notes or something. I sent you the pictures of the box.
Yes,
they definitely put the generator on top of the wing. And it's amazing. They didn't break the winglets, the wing tips. They didn't break those, but the main wing, they just dropped all sorts of stuff. So basically, I was like, should I send it back? Should I do whatever? I said, well, it was my stupid mistake for breaking this thing. So I just ripped off the pieces that I needed. I added them to it, and I basically made it work. I re-glued it to the one good wing, and I made it work. And I even had to manufacture one little plastic piece that it turns out that it also came off when the whole thing pulled apart. That they don't sell individually. And I wasn't about to spend $25 for this little plastic piece. So I just kind of whipped out the knife, looked around the house, brainstormed a little bit, whittled out a piece of plastic, and I made it work. It was very, very expensive. Now, just to continue this whole Radiant story.
So you have a new airplane after you bought one off
Yes.
of Craigslist. Now you have a new one.
Yes, and I highly recommend.
All right.
Getting some of the planes off of Craigslist can be a great deal if
Sure.
you know what you're buying and you're aware, or if it may need a little TLC, just you can repair it or do something and you get a great plane. Well, that pretty much went out the window by the time I had to buy a new wing and whatever. But I still got a good deal because it's still cheaper than buying a new plane. But still, it was an expensive lesson. I'll just continue. I'll go into the future a week later, or after I got all the parts and I put the plane back together. I went back out to that field and I was like, okay, this time I'm going to assemble the plane. I'm going to have my little checklist. I'm going to go over everything. I'm going to get this completely right. I went out. I flew. Had a fantastic time. But something wasn't quite working right. The plane was flying. Plane was flying okay, but it just didn't seem that responsive to me. Now, it wasn't like it's flying out of control, but it just wasn't as responsive. And I thought it was because of the polyhedral style wing. And I still wasn't used to doing the coordinated turns with it. And of course, it's hard to, it's just different doing coordinated turns since it's rudder and elevator only. And it's just a different feel. I thought it was just me getting used to this plane doing this. So I was like, okay, no problem. So anyway, after flying it like once or two, no, it was my second flight. And I'm flying it, and it just isn't flying right to me, Mike. And it's just weird how it was flying. But meanwhile, I'm still flying with the buzzards. I'm having a great time. But finally, I just said, well, I'm going to bring it in. Came in and I landed it, and I kind of I boffed the landing, and I flipped the plane over. So as I'm walking up to the plane, I start moving the control surfaces to see that they're moving okay. And guess what control surface wasn't working?
Well, if it was turning, your rudder was working. Was it climbing and descending? Because you only have one other.
Not really well.
So you were using the motor to get it to climb.
If I wanted to get
the elevator was not working,
but the elevator seemed like it was working. So here's the thing. I don't know what happened, but the elevator was not working. And let me tell you, folks, of everything that can not work, the elevator, once the elevator stops working, it ends with a crash. My elevator.
Well, yes, because you can turn an airplane with the rudder. Right. That's what turns it. You can roll an airplane or get it to kind of roll the direction with the ailerons. Right. The elevator goes out, you've got no pitch motion. Exactly. So you've got power, but that's it. I mean, if you have enough power to hold the nose off the ground, you might luck out. But normally with no elevator, you got nothing.
Okay, so now here's the cool part. All the clevises and control rods all had clear rubber silicone tubing on them, except for this one that goes to the elevator. It had it on, but the actual pin had broken. It was gone.
Oh.
It was just
so it was just sandwiched in between it.
No. It was kind of sandwiched there, but basically at this point it's not even attached. It's just away from
dangling free.
It's just dangling in the wind.
But that could have been caused by the nose over that it finally fell off.
Maybe.
But if you have that rubber piece and it's tight enough to hold
maybe.
it with the pin shoes
that may
off,
be the case.
It may have been just moving.
Well, I went to move the elevator itself. Well, the elevator itself was kind of like jammed. So if you went and moved the elevator, it was really stiff. It was hard to move from the position it was in. So it was not at a neutral position. It was in a slightly nose up position.
Oh, you lucked out.
The angels were smiling upon me, but obviously this XL
They felt bad. They felt bad from your purchase of the wing, and they were like, "Well, we're not going to have him purchase a fuselage."
The XL,
too.
It definitely has a death wish because I mean, I checked the whole plane out. I put everything together. That was like, there's nothing you could do. There's really no check. That's just one of those things. It was just a plastic piece, just didn't hold up. It just, like you said, it could have broke when I landed it. But probably the reason why I landed so hard, or it was a bad landing, was because I didn't have any pitch control.
Right. No, that could have been the case. That's insane, dude. I'm impressed already. The fact that everybody can know that Jay can fly an airplane without an elevator. Good for you, buddy.
I don't recommend it. I like to pat myself on the back, but honestly, I was just, that was sheer, when you talk about having luck, Mike, being lucky or good,
I'd much rather be lucky.
That's all that was. I'd love to say it was my perfect flying. First of all, I realized the problem that I had no pitch control, and I put in the power, and I was able to keep my nose up and keep control of the air. No, there was none of that crap.
I didn't know what happened until I crashed.
It wasn't until I landed. I didn't know that I had a serious problem. There's no more that I can say about that.
Well, I tell you what, it could have been that could have been devastating because you could have been up and the elevator get jammed in a nose down position. And I know because I flew a Radian, I flew Phil's Radian when that actually happened, and it just pitched over. And I'm telling you, I've never felt more helpless in my life than to watch this thing.
And it happens in an instant.
Head to the ground with no rudder input, no elevator input or nothing. It is very distressing for me to.
And I could say to you, Mike, well, why didn't you put it into a knife edge and then, fly it like that to the ground? No.
Ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen.
You could do it on the simulator.
I tried everything.
Type of thing, but in real life, no.
Right.
It doesn't work that way, friend.
Well, and, I tried to push it all the way around inverted, and that didn't work either. So it was just, at that point, I had to just chop the throttle, put the spoilers out, and hope for the best. And, man, you did luck out. That's amazing. And for you, obviously, it's a grass, right? So it wasn't like you banged it up on asphalt or whatever. Like if you'd have been in Alaska, you'd have been landing on asphalt probably, or at least cartwheeling down the asphalt.
That's right. Make a nice little foam sparks.
Hey, that's right. Foam sparks. Yeah.
But so that was
okay. So were you able to repair? I mean, it didn't do any damage to the airplane.
No, it did no damage. I just went and I replaced that clevis with a better one, a Meteor one, and I put it back in the plane. It's ready to fly again. So that's what I'm waiting on. It's just another nice cooler morning so I can go out and try it again.
So you haven't flown it
since then? No,
since.
It's just been too hot.
Right. That's insane, dude. That
I lucked out.
Is amazing.
Lucky.
Story. So what? Okay, so what's the moral of the story then? Once again, we've talked about safety checks, making sure everything is, in the right
first
position.
of all,
you and I have a history.
So for the first half of the story, it comes down to having yourself a checklist when you have a new plane that you haven't, and that's part of what I wasn't familiar with the plane, so I was all excited. I get to be like a little schoolgirl, and I get all excited about having a new plane. And so, I rush and put it together, but I never looked into the little wing baglet that the guy had made to see it.
Hey, what are these for? I don't care.
That's right. What are these big iron bars for? I don't need that. Yeah.
Who needs wing spars?
Almost caused me a mishap because, not having those in because I wasn't familiar with your plane. So I guess the moral of the story is when you get a new plane, put it together. Put it all together, get familiar with it, make yourself a little checklist to remind you of maybe some key or different points that may be different. Like in my case, hey, don't forget the wing spars. I didn't make a checklist. I was all excited, just ran out to the field, threw it together, and almost crashed it. So now the clevis coming off, there's nothing. That's just the hand of God. That's spin the dice. Have your lucky rabbit's foot with you. Whatever. Wear your purple socks. Whatever works for you. That's what you probably do.
That is funny. Well, but you were able to get a good deal off of Craigslist, and I'll tell you that I search Craigslist all the time here in Phoenix because Phoenix is a great flying state, and there are always good deals.
Always.
To be had. I have gotten, one or two items. I actually got a what do you call that? The ESC.
Oh, that's
I
right.
got a really
ice.
Yes, I did. I get a Castle Creations ice off of there, and the guy was relatively close to me, and went over to his house. He hooked it up to his airplane, showed me it worked, and it was a really good deal. I brought it back home, and I've been using it ever since. So it's a great place to go. It's always an option, as well as RC Groups has a classified section. So sometimes I shop in there as well, but it's really good to find. And as a matter of fact, there is an estate sale coming up here in Phoenix for me. That will actually, later this month. That will actually, it's mostly RC stuff.
Right.
So I'm excited about going to that. I think I sent you the details on it, and I'm going to run over there and kind of figure out what the guys have to offer. But sometimes you can get great deals. Sometimes you can get really good stuff. Sometimes the stuff is not so great.
Right.
It needs a lot more work. But you never know. Didn't you get a free one off of Craigslist?
Yeah, that was the other Maiden that I did. I had gotten a Sky Surfer Pro, which is basically a Bixler type of plane, pusher, pusher style trainer, and it was free. And it was my wife, of all people, who told me about it, because I wasn't on Craigslist that day.
No.
I was busy fixing something around the house, and she goes, "Hey, there's a free plane on Craigslist." And I'm like, yeah. And I looked on there, and I figured it was gone by the time I got there, but it was broken. The guy's like, "Yeah, broken plane, blah, 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 free." And I looked at it, and I said, I think I could fix that. And it turned out that it had a broken spar, and that he had crashed it, and it had cut out marks in the wing. And it was really easy for me to throw some spackle in there, do some of the techniques we talked about repairing foam. Bada bing, bada boom, fix that within 15 minutes. And as for the broken spar, I repaired that I found out of my junk box, where all my little bits and pieces are in. I found a 6-inch piece of carbon, left over for something, tubing. And I think it was actually an old arrow shaft. And it fit perfectly inside the other carbon rod. And I just put it inside, slapped on some 5-minute epoxy, slipped it inside, put the two pieces together, bing, fixed.
Excellent.
It was fixed.
Wow. Now you can put a steel I-beam on there, and it won't bend, right?
Pretty much. Now, unfortunately, though, that I made that plane that day too, and it actually had a crash of all planes.
What?
Yes, I've flown this style plane before. They're usually great to fly, no problems. And we got out in the field, and my buddy Jim was throwing it for me, and it was like the second it left where I had Lady Luck on the glider. Well, she left me when it came to this plane.
She was worn out, went and took a nap.
I don't know if you've ever seen the
this
commercial where there's a guy and he's got this guardian angel, and the guardian angel's all tired out because he's preventing all these accidents. Well, my guardian angel was back sitting in the shade drinking a cool margarita when Jim threw the plane.
There you go.
And it wasn't any fault of Jim's throw or anything. I think just the wing. I think the wings came apart or something came apart, and basically what happened was the ailerons just jammed themselves into a right turn. Right aileron came up, the left aileron went down, and then I had nothing. I had no ailerons at all, and it just nosed right into the ground. Everything else worked, but the ailerons just stopped. So I'm gonna have to take. I've repaired the damage, and it wasn't that bad because we were just throwing it off the ground. I was able to repair that pretty easily, but I have to look at the joining mechanism. They have a servo connector, but basically where it would be where you join, extender, but they've pulled off the cover so that the pins are exposed, so that when you plug the wing into the pins, that's how they connect. Well, if you do any damage to the wing or do anything, those things bend, and sometimes they don't have good contact. Right. So obviously something like that happened, and when we went to throw it, it just must have dislodged or something, and I had no ailerons, and tanked it right into the ground. So that was a little disappointing. So I haven't totally repaired that. And then the third plane I flew that day was, I told you guys I'd been wanting this EPP Eagle. Now that I've finished the whole entire plane, I have to say it's kind of a novel, enjoyable plane, but I really can't recommend it to folks. It's not meant for beginners type of airplane. I mean, honestly, it goes together. in half an hour, 40 minutes. But in order to get the plane to fly correctly, you have to manufacture some parts and redo some things because the plane is so badly designed. And what I mean by that is they have the firewall, they have a piece of plywood, and you attach the plywood to a piece of like 3 millimeter or 2 millimeter EPP that's really floppy, and then it braces up against this other piece of 2 to 3 millimeter EPP that's supposed to support the firewall in the nose and give the nose support. Well, you can bend this EPP with your hands, so the whole when the motor goes on, it flexes the nose of the plane, and the plane doesn't come with folding propellers. When it hits the ground, it tends to just rip off the whole nose. All the complaints I read about it, the whole nose cones get, the whole firewall just rips off on just landing the aircraft. Just it would be a perfect landing and just kind of catch that wingtip. I mean, the propeller rips off the whole nose because it's so weak.
Wait, how big is the battery in this thing? I mean, not the battery, the motor.
Well, the battery's about a 1,000 to a 1,300 millimeter battery, 3-cell battery is what I used. And the motor I used is it's 50 grams. It swings about a 9 to 8 inch prop. It's one of the ones that I normally flew for when we did a lot of our Blue Core foamies.
Like a Blue Wonder type
It's bigger
motor?
than a Blue Wonder, but you could use a Blue Wonder on this aircraft. That's the type.
So like a Hacker 10.
A Hacker, yeah, a 10, 20, somewhere around that. So it can swing anywhere, like I said, 8 to 10 inch prop with no problem on a 3-cell.
Well, I was trying to figure out how much the thing would weigh, because if you just have how thin is the EPP?
It's 2 to 3 millimeters.
I mean,
It's very thin.
yeah. So you're hanging a big heavy motor on this little piece of
right.
foam.
But what I'm saying is, even if you used a Blue Wonder motor, because the way they have, there's no support from, like they give you a plywood bracket, okay, and this bracket holds your servos and gives some structure to the body of the plane. If you hold it, the body of the
Right.
fuselage, you could squeeze it and hold it because you have this plywood frame that's inside of it. It extends all the way up to about 2 inches to the firewall, and it just stops. So you have a 2-inch gap of nothing.
Right.
So you can grab
Right.
you could grab that motor and you could like move the motor, just barely move it, and it flexes the whole fuselage. That 2 inches of fuselage flexes because there's no
Right.
support behind it. So what I did was I grabbed a bunch of the scrap that everything's laser cut, goes together really easy, that whole plywood frame. Well, all the scrap
Right.
that was left over, I just kind of broke it, sanded it, and then I glued it to the side of the EPP on the inside, glued it up against the frame that was there, and so it kind of bridged out from it and gave support up to where the firewall goes. Now, instead of just having
Right.
just a plain firewall that they gave you, I used it. But what I did was I took some of that the pink Corningware foam that we talked about before in our building with foam and stuff you could use, and you could buy that 2x2 block from Home Depot.
Yeah.
So I got some of
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that's it.
I have some.
Yeah.
right
So
here, actually.
instead of using, I used some of that, and then I cut up a piece that modeled the piece of the plywood fuselage that they give you, and I just mirrored that, and then I glued that whole piece back into it so it touched the wood scraps that I put in there, and now I have support from because that pink Corningware is very stiff and it's very solid, but it doesn't weigh anything. But now it gives structure to the firewall, and now that is butted up against those plywood extenders that I put on. So now the whole thing has structure. You can land it, you can hit. In fact, I was out there testing it when I was trying to figure out where the CG was, because they're the Chinese CG. I don't know what that means in Chinese, but it definitely doesn't mean balancing planes. What they give you for that, it's not quite right, and you have to kind of fiddle around with it. So I kind of had a tail heavy plane, and I kind of had a nose strike when I kind of landed the plane or whatever. I was struggling with the CG. It was a good thing because it kind of broke out that firewall, but it didn't damage the EPP any, and it was a clean break, and it helped out a lot because now it had mass and structure behind it. Now I was able to re-glue it in, get my angle correct, a little bit more correct on the because my angle was kind of off. For my motor mount was off for the engine. Now I had it more straight and it was better. And now it flies great. The plane actually flies very well. I'm still just getting the CG just tweaked a little bit better for gliding. That once I get it up to altitude, it glides. And once again, it doesn't have ailerons on it. It's an Evron style aircraft. It flies pretty well, but like I said, to get it to that stage, like I would say, like you wouldn't have too much of trouble. But if you are a new or a new flyer, or like as we're trying to give stuff out to beginner flyers, I would not recommend this aircraft. I think you need to have a few planes under your belt and be able to manufacture parts and think outside the box, because you have to in order to get a plane to fly, to make your own firewall or come up with your own solutions. So
yeah, right.
So
now it's got a V-tail.
It has a V-tail
right?
on it, and like I said, it has an Evron style, like kind of like the Puffwing, style aircraft, and it like I said, it flies fairly well once you get everything kind of spaced out right and the CG correct. But like I said, since you have to kind of throw this, even if you build it per the plans, they don't really tell you where to put them. They have to use the VAR type of assembly. That looks about right,
Right.
And
yeah.
so you put the spar. You put the motor mount on, and it doesn't like line up or slide into a slot or come perfectly. So you go, this is how I want to line this up. You just eyeball it, and it's like I said, it could be frustrating depending on the type of builder you are, because some people you get fixated on, you want this to be perfect, and that's not going to work out right with this style of aircraft. It's not,
Well, besides that, how did it look in the air?
Oh,
did it look
actually,
realistic,
it looks.
Did it look?
It looks now from this part. It looks very cool in the air because it looks like a real eagle, or buzzards fly around where I fly, but it looks like a buzzard or a small buzzard when it's flying around. So from that standpoint, it looks very cool. Once I turn the motor off and I start gliding, it looks very, very cool. But I haven't got it to glide. It definitely dives a little bit when it climbs, and I haven't got and I had to reprogram it, because once I got it to glide well, then when I put the motor on, then it would climb too much. You know what I mean? I had to actually put in my own down elevator. So I made a mix as I advanced the throttle. It put so much down elevator in. So I had to come back and reprogram that. So I haven't flown it since then. So I have to go back out and now see how my programming, how it works.
Right.
So that's why I was saying it looks great in the air, but you have to do a lot of tweaking. People probably won't like, having to do all that compared to like, an E-flight plane or you build it and just go out and fly it. So I really can't recommend this one.
Well, this one's not really readily available. I mean, I know there are several companies that had them for sale. They were fairly expensive.
Right.
It did say for the intermediate flyer, and they've been out of stock a long time. So you actually got this one off of Banggood Hobbies,
off
right?
Of Banggood Hobbies, and it was only, I think, $36. So I mean, for the price, it wasn't bad. And basically I threw it together. For me, like I know for you and probably a lot of other of our listeners and stuff. You have a box full of leftover servos. Because that's all I threw. I just threw whatever servos I could find into this thing. And I had a spare motor. Like I said, it was a 50-gram motor. It was like I had to look back up what it could do. But, I just threw whatever motor I had in there. And it works fine. It works great. You could, like I said, you could use Blue Wonder motors would work in this. It doesn't really matter. And that's where it gets confusing for a lot of people, because, they just want to get a thing, screw in a motor that they recommend and it works. Well, with this, since there's no fixed place to put the firewall, depending on what motor you use, depends on where you move the firewall. You get me? And some people might not like that, because then it doesn't line up kind of like where they said it would. And you have to, then you have to start jerry rigging it. Yeah. So although I've enjoyed it and I haven't really crashed it that much, I really can't recommend it for the beginner. There's just too much fiddling with it. So maybe if they come out with a version 2 and they fix the things that I'm talking about, then it would be a much better flyer. But right now, it's just people would find it they probably won't have as much fun with it, because you'd have to be building it. You spend more time building than I've flown it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Now, do you think if you were to fiberglass the nose in there that it would have been better, or no?
Oh, like I said, from a builder's standpoint, there's 50 different ways that you could put the nose or build this thing. There's no restrictions on how you could have built this or better built it, or if you had a 3D printer, I would have made a plastic motor mount that just would have went in and braced up against everything and glued it in. But that's, once again, that's where if they come out with a version 2, hopefully, because I wrote back to the company and hopefully they heed my, if they want to sell more of these, that's all they have to do is just put a little bit more design into it. And then it'll be a great plane. Then it won't be so awkward for other people getting this plane afterwards.
You put the Jay Neely expert, hey, let me tell you how to do this.
Yeah,
right?
But the only bad part about Banggood Hobbies sometimes, when you give recommendations, they get really defensive.
Thank you, Mr. Neely. You are no longer allowed on Banggood Hobbies.
They wrote me one time and they asked me on RC groups, they had asked me to review a motor combo that they had, an escape motor combo. And so they sent it to me. I tried it out. It wasn't perfect. I basically said, hey, here's your problem. You have the wrong advertisement. They had a picture of a totally different escape motor combination and to what I received. And I said, hey, you have the wrong motor. This motor goes to like a hack or something or whatever. And this is not what it is. And what your recommendations are, don't work with this. And they were like, well, if it isn't what you ordered, sir, we will give you a credit. And I'm like, no. You guys sent it to me for a review. I'm just telling you, you got your pictures mixed up.
Right. They sent it to you for free too, right? Because you were going to evaluate it. So you got a free motor escape combo to evaluate. Yes. You said the picture doesn't match up, and now they're going to refund you or actually trade out.
And that's what
give you credit.
So they sent me back all these like nasty grant. Well, if it's not what you wanted and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, okay, fine. We'll send you a new this and that. So I ended up getting another motor escape thing. And I'm like, stop sending me stuff. I'm reviewing your product that you asked me to review for you. I didn't buy this. I'm just reviewing this and I'm giving you back the feedback. You need to fix just these 2 simple things and then it'll be fine. But your picture you have for it is wrong. You need to just talk to the guys who web design and tell them to put this picture in there and change the description a little bit and it'll be fine. This stuff works fine. And they ended up giving me this credit and they gave me some money, all this other stuff. It was crazy. And, I got to keep the stuff, but it was like, after it was all said and done, I was like, okay, I don't think I want to do that. Cause they got all defensive, like, oh my gosh, why do you order this stuff and then get all snotty about it? And I'm like, I'm doing I'm doing what you guys asked me to do. I'm reviewing this for you. It works great.
Also, I'll tell you what my dad says. My dad would say, what we have here is a failure to communicate.
Yes. I guess the translator from Chinese to English, I wrote, hey, the picture's wrong. Must have came out, you bastards. I guess is how they took it.
Yeah, your Chinese is a little off. Maybe you should look at those characters. Hey, you insulted his mother.
Probably so. That's right. Us in the city of Mon, we will not take your orders anymore.
That's right. That's funny.
Yeah. So that's just craziness. Gosh. But other than that, like I said, I had 3 near mishaps. That's been a long time since I've had 3 maidens and almost 3 mishaps, all the way around. But I'm hoping my next go around will be a lot better. Now, speaking of things that can fly off of, bad fields or grass fields, you got something in the mail that is very exciting. You've been waiting like a little schoolgirl for.
I did actually. My A10 came in case you didn't know. It came in actually, I think we did a podcast last week or the week before, and it actually arrived, and we kind of mentioned that I had collected all these parts and talked about some of the things in our receivers.
Oh, yes.
Episode. It was here. It was just sitting in the other room. So anyway, I finally got all my personal stuff figured out and decided to pull the box apart and take a look at it. And so I unboxed the majority of it to kind of just look at it and see what it looked like, because I've only seen it on the web, and here it has been sitting in my house for a week, and it was pretty exciting. My parents were in town, and my dad helped me get the box all apart. I will have to say, from an unboxing, they did a really good job. The box is very fat. It's very tall, and it's not very long. So it came double boxed in the box itself, which has all the parts taped down, and then it was put in the outside, kind of a thick brown, box to kind of to help it. They shipped it. I think UPS or FedEx or whoever it was that brought it, and it arrived in really good shape. There was a little crease on the box, and I thought, oh man. But when I pulled it all apart, the box was in good
Lucky
shape.
Guy. Obviously, a different union guy.
Yeah,
from
it
the
did
guy
not
who's
look like
delivering my stuff,
yours
for sure.
Yes, right, exactly. We've got the excellent staff from FedEx UPS out here, so shout out to those guys. It's got like 2 levels to it. So the top level, when I pull the box off, or the cover, or the open the box, it's got the first level, and that has one of the wings and the nacelles, and I think some other parts to it. Let me tell you what, Jay. I pulled the wing out of this thing. First of all, this wing felt like a 2x4. I was very impressed with it. It's foam, right? The whole airplane's
Supposedly,
foam,
yes.
but the foam is so dense. The foam is so dense. It literally, you could wave. It's almost like a board. I handed it to my father. I was like, "Man, feel this." He's like, "What is that? Is that foam?" And I was go, "Yeah." He goes, "Wow, it's really hard. It feels more like wood." So I was impressed with that, and it basically comes with everything just ready to assemble. I pulled the nacelles apart, and I actually have a picture I think I sent you of my hand around the 80 millimeter nacelle, and it obviously doesn't go all the way around the nacelle. So it's a huge engines, huge wings. I pulled the first layer off under the first set of foam, the wing and the nacelles and everything. Is the fuselage, and the fuselage is actually in 2 pieces. Another wing was on the bottom of that. So basically the box is the size of the fuselage, of half of the fuselage, right, and the wing. And then it's stacked on top of each other, so it's taller. I took most of it out just to inspect it, and then unfortunately I had to put it all back in the box because, as you know, I had places to be and things to do, and we had a family event. My son got married, and we spent the whole week, getting him all ready. So it's in the spare room, and it's sitting there waiting for me to finally gather all my materials and go in there and start building. So I might be able to, get that done. But the landing gear looked really sturdy. I checked everything over. It looks like it's going to be just fabulous. And if you haven't already seen, there's a lot of build videos or people that have put their airplanes together and gone out and test flown them. And I think we should do a podcast on flying EDFs, because all of the videos that I've seen, these guys have come in here and just hammered this thing on the ground and either broke the nose gear off, or broke one of the main gear off, or knocked all the the ordnance off.
There is a bit of a
tipped
difference
it over
between flying your regular prop planes to an EDF. There is a slight difference.
There is a slight difference, and we should save that for another podcast, probably later on down the road.
I think
as we get
yapped
this
enough tonight.
Yeah, it's we're kind of out of time anyway, but the airplane's in great shape. I'm super excited. I think as I start putting this together, most of it now is just how many mods I want to do, and me, I can put the airplane together relatively. It takes about an hour and a half. Well, it takes about an hour and a half to put the airplane together. I could have it ready to fly, tomorrow. Right. But I have been rolling through my head some of these modifications that some of these guys have done, and there are 1 or 2 out there. They put one guy put a extension ladder that comes out and actually looks realistic. One of the guys, same guy, has a canopy that opens and closes, which is not standard, but really looked cool. Some of the guys have painted their landing gear white instead of silver because it's white on the actual airplane, and then a couple of guys put sound systems in it. One of the guys has designed a powder cannon so that they throw smoke out of the front of the
gow. Yeah.
And so it's just down to the I thought I was overwhelmed at first just gathering all my material, and now that I have all my parts together, I'm looking at all these mods going, oh, look at that, ooh, look at that one. And the paint jobs that have come out there, this thing comes in a standard gray. Some of these paint jobs are phenomenal, man. I mean, people have gone to the greens, to the Alaska. I saw one the other day that was a blue. I don't know where it came from, but it was a digital kind of a blue sky kind of thing. It really, really looked amazing. And so I just have to kind of sit down at my desk and make a list of all the things that I think I need to do with.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a big plane, but some of those digital, really, really good digital camo type camouflage things sometimes can backfire because they work too well.
Well, and that's what, that's funny you say that, because I honestly found another paint scheme that was a desert camo, and I thought, ooh, this would be really cool. All these browns and these, dark tans, and then I started thinking, yeah, I guess it's probably not a wise idea in Arizona. The thing just disappears somewhere in the foliage,
right, or as you go across
the background, and all of a sudden I can't see it.
Backdrop of a mountain, it just disappears into the mountain. You're like,
It
what?
disappears. Yeah, I can't see it anymore. So maybe I'll figure something out. It's just that every time I see something new, I think, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, people are amazing.
Yes,
they really are. They have great, ideas. They have great imaginations. They're able to put it in the works and get it done. And the more they do that, the more I see in this hobby where people have used their innovations, I just get excited, and I'm thinking, man, I really got to do that. And so that's kind of where I'm at with mine. But it is here. I am excited about it, and it's just a matter of putting everything together. And now that all my family stuff is out of the way, I've got some training coming up this next, into this month, and then I'll get right on it. So
all right. Well,
I'll report next time.
I'm excited.
But those are great stories. Yeah, me too. Those are great stories. Congratulations on your new field.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, and we're excited about that. Shout out to Jim for mowing the place. I heard he was the one that mowed it, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, good for him. Well, we're going to have to invite him to the podcast one of these days. Hopefully I can get down there and meet him face to face. But Jim, thanks a lot for taking care of Jay. Shout out to you and to all our listeners. If you're listening anywhere in the world, give us a shout and tell us how we're doing. You can go to our website at theparkflyerpodcast.com, and you can go to drop us a line or email on parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com. So
fantastic.
We really appreciate it. I think we're to the point where Jay finally got his studio back up and running, and everything's settled in. It's all unpacked now, I think. But we sure enjoy putting the podcast together, and we appreciate you listening everywhere, all over the world. So check us out on iTunes. Give us a star rating and review. And other than that, stay safe. Make sure you're doing all your pre-flights.
Yeah, do your pre-flights, folks.
So you don't wind up like
don't
Jay.
Be Jay.
Yes, don't be that guy. Well, listen, we appreciate it. Thanks for joining us tonight on the Park Flyer Podcast. We hope to see you in a couple of weeks.
And we can't wait to hear from you soon. So be safe and go fly.
All right. Have a good night.
You have been listening to the Park Flyer Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit. Please give our show a star rating and review, and feel free to email us your questions, topics, or suggestions to parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com.